welcome to the Sub Hub podcast. I'm EmKay Sullivan.
And I'm Dani Moreno.
And just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Never Second. Use code SUBHUB25 at checkout to get 25% off of your purchase.
Yeah, and today we have a fun episode. I feel like personally I've been craving kind of like catching up with EmKay and doing a longer form. We've been doing a lot of short form content for you guys, prepping you for the series, etc. So today, me and EmKay are going to catch up, talk about what's been going on in our lives. We're going to chat about Kodiak, which happened this past weekend, which was another UTMB World Series race, which allowed people to qualify for OCC, CCC, and UTMB. We also are going to chat about the most recent Valsir Mountain Running Cup. A lot of information and good stuff happened there. And then we will do some previews for the upcoming World Series for both Golden Trail World Series and the Sky Running World Series, which are both happening this month.
Yeah, it'll be an action-packed episode.
Yeah, this might be like a long run episode for some people who are finishing out their season. Yeah.
Speaking of Kodiak, you ran this weekend. How are you feeling?
Yeah, actually my body feels really good, surprisingly. During the race, kind of like the last maybe like 4 miles, I felt my hamstrings quite a bit. Not like I'm gonna pull something, but just like they're working a lot. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, but the course was 53K, which I feel like such a dummy because that was clearly on the website. And like 80% of us were somehow surprised that it was a 53K, not a 50K. And with the race going after the last climb, there was like a sign at the top, and there was actually still a little bit more climbing that said 4 to go. And I'm sure myself and hundreds of people in the race looked down at their watch and were like, we're going to run like 32, 33 miles today. I thought we only had 2 miles to go or 3 miles to go. And sometimes races put those signs on or up, and they're not always right, but this one was definitely right for sure. Where I was like, okay, just run 2 miles, and if it seems like you can't see town yet, then you're actually running 4 miles. And at that point, I had already committed to a move, so yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. But sorry, I got distracted. But it was very much a running course. Like I maybe hiked once and it was on this climb up to Snow Summit. So I feel like when you're actually running for hours, your hamstrings, especially on uphills, because you're actually able to run all the uphills, are so engaged that the last 5K, I was just like, all right, I really need to get to the finish line.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel like every time I run Way Too Cool. I get to like the final 5-6 miles and I'm like, oh my God, my hamstrings.
Yeah.
I've been running way too much.
Yeah, I was trying to think of other races like that. And I think it's all of those like early 50Ks, maybe like Chuckanut, Way Too Cool, Formidable, where you're actually running for like 4 to 5 hours versus, the Europe races that we tend to do.
Yeah. But speaking of the longer distances, that same exact thing happened to me at Mammoth, where I like didn't look at the Strava profile so closely that I knew how long the race was. I just was like, oh, it's 50K, it's fine. And then I got to the portion that is like the last 3 miles of the course, and I knew that it was 3 miles because I had run it before multiple times, and I was like, oh my God, I'm already at mile 29. Like this is going to be a 32, 33 mile race. And it was. And yeah, you're just like never prepared for that.
I know, but we should be. This is the funny part, because I finished and Corinne, out of all people, she was in the 100K. She's like, yeah, it said 53.5K on the website. And I was like, how did you know that? And me, Tabor, and Rachel, none of us realized that it was actually a 53K. It was pretty funny.
Block it out.
Yeah, it was. So, kind of this part of the year has been weird for me. I think a lot of people who are probably in the same boat where, potentially they had an entry to a UTMB race, CCC or OCC, for other reasons besides having had qualified this last year. And so we all we're kind of like hearing he said, she said, like they're going to extend the qualification until next spring. And so originally I was planning to do Les Templiers, and then I kind of had a switch of heart where I was like, okay, maybe I'll do Cappadocia, which is this race in Turkey that a lot of my teammates went to. And then I think it was like the week before Mammoth or 2 weeks before Mammoth is when they released the official rules, because it was a lot of he said, she said gossip really amongst like all of us, that we had to qualify. And at first it was, I think if you remember, it was like December 1st, I think was the first thing we heard. And then they extended it to like, no, you could qualify until the end of the year. And so that just like put somewhat of a panic. I don't know how to explain it, but we were all kind of shuffling and we're like, oh crap, like we need to qualify. And so for us North Americans, that only left two options if you didn't want to travel very far, which was Kodiak or Puerto Vallarta. And I ended up choosing Kodiak, and to my pleasant surprise, so did some other great American women choose Kodiak. So then I think it was kind of this mind shift too of like, oh, I'm just going to go qualify. Just like, oh, I'm going to go race to qualify now.
Yeah. And then actually like a week before your race, UTMB told the PTRA that we could petition to like qualify through June. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people are going to be so pissed. But at the same time, like, that's just a petition. You have no idea that that's going to be granted. So you might as well just run the race and like try to qualify. And it was it was a competitive race.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it's like bittersweet, right? Because they're changing the rules because we're asking them to change the rules at the same time. But it was kind of like I had probably 3 people text me as soon as we got that email. You could ask for an extension. It's like, I'm just gonna do it. I just need to get this done.
Yeah.
It's just
I've already
hockey.
continued.
Exactly. I've already pushed that much longer. But I think we were all mentally maybe in the mindset of it kind of felt like a chore, like I doubt me, Rachel Drake, Tabor Hemming, Anna Mae Flynn, Bailey Kowalczyk had Kodiak on our schedule all year. But it was cool to show up to that. And even on the men's side too, and like the 50K and stuff. And I think once we were all there, it's like we're all experiencing these growing pains together. And then suddenly it was fun. It's like, oh, we're just all with this, like as friends and stuff like that, which was really cool. What did you think of? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it almost felt like one of those early spring 50Ks because like
totally,
I feel like that's the only time that we all really race each other for some reason.
Oh yeah, on American soil too.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like, I think for a lot of us, when you get into the sport, these are the type of races you do. You're not doing like crazy ascents and descents. I think a lot of us have that like fast running background, or a majority of us. And I was talking to, I think Rachel and Tabo, and we're like, yeah, we have like an 80% attendance of like the best women for this distance in America at this race. Obviously we're missing like yourself, Jennifer Lecter, Kimber, a couple other names that it's like, this is kind of like a pseudo USA championship in a way, which was fun. Yeah.
That was fun.
What did you think of the race? Like the atmosphere?
Get to watch the 50K, unfortunately, or the 100K really, because I was crewing for my husband. So like the atmosphere was kind of lost on me, I think, but I was there with friends that aren't runners. And so that's always fun, like having a group of people that, well, they run, but not in the sense that like we do. And so having a group of those people join to like help crew Tommy was a lot of fun because they're just like, why would you ever do this? Like my Tommy's at like mile 33 and he's halfway through and they're like, what? But I'm like, here's a sunscreen, here's some gels, this is your job, this is my job, and we're like pit crewing him through everything. So that was enjoyable for me.
That's really cool. Yeah, I was when I was running, I had by the way, Tommy is EmKay's husband, as
Yeah.
many of you probably know by now. But he ended up getting third in the 100K. So he qualified for CCC, and that was his first 100K. And then our friend Rod decided the day before he was going to run the 100K. He ended up winning that. So that was cool to have cheering on those folks in the 100K also. But yeah, during my race, Helen and I think maybe people that were crewing Tommy or people that were friends in the area and stuff like that. I couldn't quite figure out who was in the group when I was running. Like I had just made a move on Bailey. And so I was just super fierce mode running. And then like through the tree started hearing my name. And then I looked up and it was Helen. And that was kind of fun because I was like, I feel like I'm just, out here with my friends,
Yeah. The
That
other
was
two were
pretty cool.
probably, I think she was running with Matt Seidel and Chris Myers. They were out
Oh,
there
yeah.
getting people pumped up. Tommy said that was like one of the better parts of the race for him. They started cheering for him and he was like, I started crying because I was so tired and so grateful that they were there. I was like, that's awesome.
That's really cool.
That's the upside of like racing in the US is like a lot of the times there's people out there that know you or people that you race against that are just there to like catch vibes, as Matt would say.
100%. And we had like a really cool group of women. It was me, Rachel, Tabor, Anime Flynn, and a couple of women that I didn't know in the first like 8 miles of the race. And it was kind of like an out and back. And because it's so early, we knew it was going to be two-way traffic, like as the sun was coming up. And there was just so many people cheering us on that knew our names, like almost every single person, there was some name like go Dani, go Rachel, go Anime. And I just thought that was so cool because I'm like, it probably is because we are in America that's happening, So I thought that was really, really cool.
And what a weird thing to have to wear a headlamp for a 50K. I feel like I've never experienced that.
That was so weird. It wasn't even on the mandatory gear, which,
Yeah.
maybe Kodiak add that. But it wasn't until like the week of that Bailey texted me and was like, hey, are you bringing a headlamp? And I was like, I didn't even think about that. I probably should. And yeah, we were in you could not have ran that without a headlamp.
No.
It was
No.
pitch dark. And even Chad Hall, the morning of, he's like, yeah, it's weird that they picked the darkest trail for like the nighttime version. And we're like, yeah, you definitely could have not worn a headlamp.
Yeah, no, it was so dark and it was surprisingly cold too, like colder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, like 20 degrees colder.
Yeah, I swear I checked the weather and it was like, oh, it'll be low 40s, so I didn't like pack anything that warm and it was 28.
Yes. Yeah. Same. All of us were like, oh, we don't need arm sleeves. We don't need, layers underneath. And then all of us were just shivering at the start line. But yeah, highly recommend Kodiak. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool event, especially growing up in like Los Angeles and SoCal. I felt a lot of that presence there through various ways. And just a reminder for those people, the rules officially are now that if you want to race OCC, CCC, or UTMB, you have to qualify the calendar year before. So you have until December 31, 2023 to qualify for 2024. So if you do any races next year, they are actually qualifying you for 2025. So hopefully that doesn't surprise people. They like run canyons and, they're not in for that year.
And hopefully it doesn't change again.
And hopefully it doesn't change again.
Yeah, it'd be nice to just have like one system.
Yes. Hopefully it stays like this at least for a year. And then I did want to call out one more aspect of the qualification is it's the top 3 in those events. So for example, Tommy, EmKay's husband, was 3rd. So he's automatically in for CCC. If for some reason he had gotten 4th or 5th, he still would have had a chance to qualify because then they look at these points based off your index score of the race result, which a lot of people have been confused about. It's not your index score overall. It's what you do on the day. So you could be Courtney DeWalter with the highest index score, but if you were to like run a 300, which she would never do that. But if that were the case on the day, she actually wouldn't have gotten into the race. Maybe that's a poor example, but people will get what I'm trying because you would probably be in already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the 50K for women, it's 680. So that's what Rachel Drake was doing. Like Rachel Drake, went out, I think for like the first half, and then kind of like pulled off a little bit because she's training for CIM. And so her goal was to run a time that would get her at least a 680. For men, it's 830 in the 50K. The 100K is 660 for women, 800 for men. For the 100-mile, it's 600 for women, 760 for men.
Yeah. And basically, since the 50K was more competitive than a lot of people thought, it's likely that, especially through top 5 on both the men's and women's side, if not further, get into the race despite not finishing top 3. So those results, by the way, are Dani Moreno, our own, winning the women's race at 4:19, Bailey Kowalczyk at 4:27, Tabor Hemming 4:40, Rachel Drake 4:55, and Hannah Rowe 4:58 for the top 5 for women. And then on the men's side, Chad Hall won with a time of 3:45, Eli Hemming pretty close behind him at 3:49, Philip Royer, a name I don't know, at 3:56, Darren Thomas at 3:58, and Morgan Elliott at 4 hours flat. So
yeah. And I heard in the men's race, I also saw him. Chad Hall just shot off like a rocket. And classic Chad Hall. And then everyone was kind of chasing him down. And I think Eli was starting to close that gap. And then, yeah, Philip Royer, I'd love to do more research on him. I haven't heard of him, but yeah, I think Darren Thomas and Morgan Elliott were also kind of like trying to close that gap as the race went on.
Yeah. But exciting for them.
Yeah, super exciting. So yeah, last race in North America is Puerto Vallarta. Otherwise your options are only 2 weekends from now. Otherwise your options are only international. Ethanon,
Sweden, or whatever.
Yeah, so
I think those are the only 3 left in general, but I could be wrong.
Dang. Yeah, so options are slimming down. All right, Valsir Mountain Running Cup. These are the races that we've been, personally, I think we both need to be more educated on, but I feel like we've learned a lot this year as the sub hub. But these are kind of like pseudo WMRA races. A lot of people don't like it to be called the WMRA Mountain Cup. It's Valsir that is supporting it. And these ones actually give you like scores through World Athletics, which is kind of interesting. And what was interesting about the Mountain Cup this year is they actually took place, I believe, where the World Championships is going to be. Is that correct?
In Gran Canaria? I actually don't know, but probably.
Oh, maybe not actually, because they're in the Pyrenees. I'll double check.
Oh yeah, yeah, because I think it's in the Pyrenees.
But these were also in the Pyrenees.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Spain, honestly, to confirm or deny.
We'll look into that.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe I read that comparison somewhere. But essentially these kind of had a similar format that the World Championships did, that EmKay participated in June, where there's an uphill race, a long distance race, and then a classic race. And again, this long distance race isn't actually like long from what I understand, but they call it the long race. So yeah, and also what was interesting is that for these races, the temperature was really high, that they changed all of the courses.
Like pretty drastically.
Yeah. And when EmKay and I were looking at the weather, it was hot. It said it was like 96 degrees. But we also
I imagine it's pretty high humidity as well.
Probably super high humidity. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also were kind of chuckling because, Western States is known for that. Like you run 100 miles in 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But we do appreciate them taking the athletes into consideration. And they said there was also a possibility for forest fires, which that's kind of scary.
And it also probably has to be put into perspective that this is a World Athletics event as well. And so there might be like specific rules that World Athletics has in terms of temperature, because they have been criticized a lot in the last 2 years for not putting athletes first. So that might be why. Whereas Western States is a private entity, basically.
No, that's a really good point to make for sure. But yeah, the uphill race, like we said, all the courses got changed. It originally was supposed to be 6K, and then it got changed to a 4K. Personally, to me, 6K is already so short.
Yeah.
So this was basically like a 2.5 mile race with 1,100 feet of climbing, which honestly, for like an uphill race, that isn't a lot of climbing per mile.
1,100 feet for 2.5 miles. No, that's not even like VK steep.
It's not even VK steep.
Yeah.
And I was looking at Christian Allen's Strava, and for perspective, his first mile was 4:49.
Well, so I saw pictures from this race and it almost looked like they were running down like a cobblestone road. And who knows how long they were on that for.
Yeah, it looked like the first half mile was slightly downhill. His first half mile was 2:20.
Oh my gosh.
So it makes
So
sense why
maybe,
he ran 4:49.
yeah, so maybe the uphill portion itself was actually like almost VK steep, but like,
Yeah.
no, because even if it's just a half a mile downhill, that's crazy.
Yeah. And
That's
then
so
it was
fast.
basically for 1.5 miles, he ran 8 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
fast.
stupid fast.
So then maybe they did gain, but even his profile, it says the first mile was 60 feet, then the second mile was 486 feet. And then, okay, yeah, the last half mile was 600 feet. So really,
Yeah.
it was just like a super punchy last half mile. So yeah, he crushed it. But I'm just saying that's interesting for an uphill race, because normally in uphill races, you're actually running uphill for a majority of the race. And I'm sure that had to do with them having to cut the course, though. Like maybe it was going to keep on that same kind of
Yeah.
pitch for the next, 3 miles originally.
Because the restrictions kept them from going above 400 meters in
Yeah.
elevation, I think, which is like only 1,100 feet basically. So it seems like they went as high as they could and then turned around.
Yeah.
But um,
But
we
yeah,
got Joe Seward in first place from Great Britain, followed by Patrick Guieno and Christian Allen in third. Shout out to Christian Allen, man. He's having a hell of a season.
I know. And I was reading the like I Run Far, and I'm glad they gave him some kudos on having like a breakout season, because I don't think maybe a lot of people are aware of how much he's been crushing it on the Valsir
Yeah.
Mountain Running Cup. And like for those who have been watching the Golden Trail World Series, everyone knows that Patrick Kipyegon and Umbogo are like crushers. Like they can win those races. Philemon won Sierra Zanal, and so Christian has been competing with them at all these races and has been pretty close. So yeah, I'm really curious to see if he's done for the year. I personally would love to see him just like stay in Europe and jump in the Golden Trail World Series race, because all his races got cut short anyways.
Yeah.
And then also I would just, it's so hard because I know these races are looking for more depth, but I'd love to see him jump in some more Golden Trail next year, just to kind of see how that goes.
No, I definitely agree.
And then on the women's side, Scout Adkin was the first woman. She's a runner from Great Britain. I forgot what place she got at Worlds, but she's known for also her uphill and her classic running. I wouldn't be surprised if she was like top 5 in both of those events at Worlds, but I would need to fact check myself. And then second was Susanna Sapunki. It looks like she might be Polish. I'm not sure what this flag is actually.
Is it red and white?
It's white and blue. And then third was Joyce Muthani, which we have seen her run at Sears now. And then fourth was Valeris Kasang, who, run together. She is a really common person on the Golden Trail World Series. And then last but not least, in fifth was Sarah Wilhoit, which was also from Great Britain, which was cool.
Yeah.
Excuse
me. You're good.
I
I just popped onto Christian Allen's Strava to see if by any chance he was in Italy. But he's in Spain still today, and it says training camp ends tomorrow, which makes me think he's going home, which kind of sucks.
Oh man. Okay.
He does have little kiddos at home, so
yeah. But yeah, the what's it called? The excitement didn't stop there. We then had the long course, which was a 38K, and it originally had this is such a big change. I literally laughed out loud when I saw this. Again, though, thanks for taking the athletes into consideration. But it went from almost 9,000 feet of climbing to 2,300.
That's like a road race almost for
That
these
is
athletes.
that is a road race for 38K. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's fast. That is fast. But to go from 9,000 feet to less than way less than one third of it, that is such a drastic thing that, I think as athletes, sometimes we forget. I mean, that happened at OCC this year, right? Like we learned about the course change the week of, where you have to be willing to adapt constantly and
Yeah.
just, work it to your advantage as much as possible. And so, yeah, Christian Allen crushed that race, and he ended up coming in first in a time of 2:29. And then the Americans went 1-2 with Andy Wacker. I can't believe I said Andrew, came in second, which
Andrew.
Andy also scooped up a Xterra World Championship like 2 weeks ago. So I just love to see Andy up there. And then we had Andrej, who was third, Andre Fiejar. I am not familiar with that name. Manuel Anguita from Spain was in fourth, and then Harry Holmes from the UK also was in fifth. So UK showed up to this.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just to like fangirl a little bit more on Christian Allen here, I'm looking at this Strava now as well. His average time or pace for this 24-mile race was 6:14. So, I mean, he's very good at mountain stuff as well, but like he's like a very recent collegiate athlete. So this was like right up his alley. His splits, like his gap paces for these are like mostly under 6 minutes.
That is so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5:55. And it looks like, yeah, they just like went up and then kind of rolling
And
down.
then bomb down.
Wow. Yeah, he was just cruising on this. Most of his splits were under 6 minutes. That's wild.
Yeah.
This was a very fast race. Um, cool. And then on the women's side, we had the winner was Ikram Razala, who's from Spain. I actually don't recognize any of these names except maybe third. Camila Magliano from Italy. Sarah Wilhoit, that's the only one I recognize. Also from the UK, Great Britain. Sorry if I messed that up. Kirsten Engelmann, who's from Germany, and then Sylvia Puiggurar now from Spain. Wow, Spain basically was, let's see, fifth through almost 12th, including first
Yeah.
place.
They were like, we're gonna show up for this 38K race with tons of vert. And then they were
Yeah.
like, wait, what?
And still crushed it.
Yeah.
Um,
This next one's crazy to me. The final
yeah,
event, the classic.
it's so crazy to me because I'm wondering if maybe this message got confused, but so the classic typically is like a 10 to 12K. So I'm
Yeah.
very confused why it says it initially was going to be over 50K.
You would think that would be the long event, which is
Yeah.
what we just talked about.
Yeah. But it went from 50K to a 22K race.
That's honestly wild. This whole weekend for these athletes, like the VK or the vertical race was probably the closest in terms of like race distance that you could prepare for. These other ones are like drastically different. To go
Yeah.
from over 50K to 22K,
That
oh my
is
God.
That's so confusing to me. That is extremely confusing. It would make more sense to me if the long had gone from 50K to 38K.
Yeah.
I hope I
And
captured that right and that this wasn't wrong, but yeah.
either way, like if this was meant to be over 50K, looking at like the winning times, Joyce won this race as well in an hour and 29 minutes. And Philemon won in an hour and 13 minutes. And if it's over 50K, you imagine it's at least 3.5 hours, maybe 4.
That's wild.
So
Yeah.
fast.
That is so fast. And it was 2 laps.
Yeah, two-loop course. So they must have, my guess is that they still couldn't go over the 400-meter elevation mark.
Yeah, and it just
So,
did the same thing over and over.
but
Wow.
again, it makes a lot of sense as to why like Liam Mayro did really well in this race. Also like a really fast collegiate kid. And so you got Philemon in first, Patrick in second, Liam in third, all very fast dudes, as we know from Philemon and Patrick going 1-2 at Sears and all. And then on the women's side, you have Joyce Muthoni coming back to win her second race of the weekend. Phalaris from Run Together, who was she second at Sears and all last year? Yeah,
Last year, I believe, yeah.
she was second at Sears and all last year. And then Scout, who was in the vertical on the women's side as well from the UK. So
Yeah. That
crazy
is
weekend.
crazy weekend. And with Philemon and Patrick too, they're going to be doubling back at Golden Trail this weekend. I don't know if Valeris is or if she has enough points. I'd have to look at the standings again. But yeah, what a weekend for Valsir Cup. Everyone showed up and did not do what was originally planned. So the athletes who adapted did really well, and athletes who were in the heat did very well. So that wraps up that Mountain Cup. They'll probably announce their schedule, as most of these series do, before the end of this year, so athletes can start reaching out, planning their calendars, etc. It's really cool to see Run Together so focused on this series. I still personally think this series lacks some depth, besides from something that we kind of touched upon in our world championship recap, in that like, or when we were previewing this, in that I think VK specialists really gravitate towards this series because there's not a lot of VKs that are kind of like people are targeting. So I think the VK races are very deep for VK specialists. But anyone who's been watching Golden Trail World Series knows they also have a 20-something K coming up. And I think, a 10th place there potentially could have, podiumed or gotten top 5 here or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But fortunately, it seems like Andy Wacker is taking the trail team to a lot of these Valsir races, which is cool. I mean, they're also doing Golden Trail, but so many of them are really good uphill specialists. And so I think it's awesome that this was like, especially early season, it felt kind of like their introduction to international racing. And then they got into the Golden Trail mostly at the American races. So
yeah. And I will say too, we do have like a American lens on this. Like, I'm sure if Francesco Pupi would probably know a lot more of the names here than we do, just kind of like off the bat, maybe people who don't travel as much and kind of just like stay in Spain or Italy when they race.
yeah.
Cool. So that wraps up the Valsir Mountain Cup. When it came to the overall winners, I believe it went Patrick and then Ambogo.
I actually think it's the other way around, but I'm not totally sure. I had a hard time finding results for this.
Me too. It shouldn't be that hard to do that.
Yeah.
All right. I'll look that up, and then you want to
We
transition
can
to
get
sky running?
started on sky running. Yeah. So hopefully you guys listened to our last 2 long episodes with Karina and Antonio. They are doing the sky running masters final. So the SkyMasters final, the weekend after Golden Trail. So this month is just insane. We had Valsir this weekend, Golden Trail this coming weekend, and then after that is the Skyrunner World Series. And Karina kind of explained the rules and rankings a little better for us, which was nice because we were very confused when we did this early season. And so the way that the points work is that you get points based off of your place. So like in a Premier Sky race, which is what most of the people in these top races do, you get 100 points for first, 80 points for second, 70 for third, 60, and then it starts to be kind of weird. It's like 54, 48, 42, 36. But for the SkyMasters final, they don't quite, it seems like they almost like add a quarter of the points to that point. So like for first place, it's 125, then 100, 88, 75, 68, 60. So they come into the final with the points that they have from the season, and it's not like leveled out or anything. They get to add these SkyMasters points to their regular season rankings, and then at the end of the day, whoever comes out on top wins. And honestly, like, I was looking at the rankings so far this year, and to me, it seems like the women's race has a lot more depth than the men's race does. Plus, they're all very close in points, whereas on the men's side, and I'll read off the points here in a second, it's very close through third, but then it drops off with fourth and fifth, not having a single win on the season. Whereas every single woman in the top 6 has at least one win.
I love that.
So, yeah, super cool. So on the women's side, going into the SkyMasters, we have tied for first is Iris Pessy and Clementine Geoffrey. Clementine won Worlds this year in the short trail distance. They both have 280 points. Iris won Calamoro and Hawk Koenig this year. Clementine won Gorbea and Mathazines. Not that far behind them is Emma Cook Clark with 260 points with a win at Madeira. Fourth, or I guess third, is Karina Carsolio, 240 points with a win at Schlegis. Hillary Girardi, 230 points with a win at Grigne. I'm probably saying that wrong. And in 6th is Marcella with 228 points with a win at Minotaur. So that's 2 people with 280 points, then 260, 240, 230, 228 for the women through 6.
I love that. I love that they all have at least one win, because I feel that in Golden Trail, at least the last few years, there's kind of been dominance, at least on the women's side. So, 2021, it was Maud. She had like 3 wins and went to the final with a near perfect score. Last year was Nike, perfect wins, going in with a perfect score. And now it's Sophia, because she, even though she had a second place, she ended up getting an extra one and had a perfect score with Judith right behind her. So, oh, that's so cool. I love that. That's going to be a great race to watch. Man, this is really hard, because it seems, me knowing just a couple of these courses, they're all technical, but in different ways. Like, you look at something like Madeira and it's like wet stairs, kind of like that slippery rock, etc. But then you look at something like Minotaur, which is like kind of like high alpine, a lot of scree, shale, etc. Yeah, these are kind of all over the place. And then Karina's win at Schlicks, 3,000, that looked like it was a lot of big boulder hopping and stuff like that. So yeah, that is, I don't know if I have like a clear favorite. To me, it wouldn't be surprising if any of these women won. And then honestly, I love that Iris is leading, because she's been a big participant in the Golden Trail World Series. And I don't think she's gotten maybe higher than a top 5. But to see her doing so well in sky running, to me, is just a testament that like we're all different athletes, and like, there's many different races for you to kind of find what makes you shine. And it's so cool that I feel like she's found that.
Yeah, definitely. And I should have mentioned this in my little intro, but the race is taking place in Limon sul Garda, which is in Italy. So both the Golden Trail final and the SkyMasters final are in Italy. The event is called the Limon Extreme. So just in case you guys want to watch, do we know if that's like live streamed or anything?
I don't know, but they've been doing really well with like their video stuff this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was like at least live updates like on their Instagram. Yeah.
If we find a live stream, we'll put it in the show notes. Not totally sure on that. So then on the men's side, like I said, the top men are very close, but then it drops off pretty drastically after that, just with none of the other guys having any wins on the season. So Antonio Martinez Perez, who we just interviewed recently, is currently in first place with 280 points, with wins at Calamoro and Madeira Sky Race. In second, actually tied for second, is Frederick Tranchond. I'm saying that wrong. And Manuel Marias, who we will be releasing an episode prior to the Golden Trail World Series with him. They both have 240 points. Frederick won Mathazines, and Manuel won Matterhorn Ultrax Extreme. And he's also ranked third in the Golden Trail. So you have the first place, Antonio, with 280 points, and then tied for second are Frederick and Manu with 240 points. And then after that, it drops down to 208 points with William Bofelli, and then 196 points for Louison Coiffé. So all of the women are above 200 points, and that's not the case for the men.
Yeah, I think it'll be a battle between these top three. Again, though, I don't know a lot on the men's sky running side. I feel like there's a lot more to learn there, whereas a lot of these women have also kind of crossed over into Golden Trail. So that's why I kind of know them. But personally, I mean, if you haven't listened to our episode with Antonio, I'm really excited to see how he does. And then Manu, people know from Golden Trail, and it's just extremely impressive to me that he's also ranked third overall in Golden Trail World Series.
And he'll be doing both races.
And he'll be doing both races. So he potentially will be going in a little bit more tired because Golden Trail is this week, whereas Sky Running is the following week. And then Frederick, who is tied with Manu, he's a world's orienteering champion. So yeah, he's used to this kind of like off-trail stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll give you guys more updates as we hear them. We'll post sky running stuff on our Instagram so you guys can keep up. And yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting end of the season, because I remember like Karina was saying like, oh, like we're not really that close, but it seems like they are closer than she thinks, because based on what I'm reading in these points, with the 125 points for a win at the SkyMasters, like even Karina with 240 points, like maybe could catch a Clementine if Clementine doesn't have as good of a day. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And before we move over to Golden Trail, I'll just do the Valsir overall really quick, since I said I would do that. Philemon ended up winning overall with 285 points. I do forget that Sierra is part of Valsir also. So that was like a double hit for him with Golden Trail. Patrick was second with 280 points, and then Joe Stewart, third place for Great Britain, 211. Remy Leroux from Canada, 168. And then our own Christian Allen ended up pulling off fifth, I think with only a couple races. I think he only did like Trofeo and the final potentially. And then on the women's side, Joyce Najiru from Kenya was first with 295. Scout Adkins, second from Great Britain, 230. Falaris Kasang, 250. Andrea Mayer, who is our VK world champion in specialist, 190. And then Lucy Merkiwi was 190. So Kenya went 135 on the women's side and 1-2 on the men's side.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
So we didn't do this in order of date, I apologize, but final that we're talking about today is the Golden Trail World Series final, which happens this weekend, October 19th through 22nd. It's going to be happening in Il Golfo del Isola, Italy, which is a little coastal town. And the race has changed a bit over the last week, but as of right now, it is a 26-kilometer race with 1,430 meters, which is almost 4,700 feet. Oh, plus a prologue, which, if you want to talk about that, Dani.
Yeah, so I feel like they just started introducing the prologue. Or I think the first time I saw it was in 2020, which was also a stage race. And the prologue was a shorter race, usually like 3 to 10K, that at least that year like gave you your starting spot, because it was like almost too congested. So they did like rows of people. And so based on how you did in the prologue, but now I think it's more of like a way to get extra points if you want. And so this year, the prologue, it starts with the women's prologue on Thursday. The men's prologue is on Friday. And then the women's race is on Saturday and the men's race is on Sunday. But the prologue this year, I believe, is an 8K. I think originally it was a 6K. And basically you're going up and then you're going down. And the points are so close this year that nearly everyone we talk to is doing the prologue. So even though you only get half points, so the winner, I believe, do they get 100 points or 50 points? I think they get 100 points. So it's
usually
the same as
200, right, for a win.
Yeah. So it's half points. But like, for example, on the women's side, Sophia Lockley was 600, Judith Wider with 588. If Judith, pulls off a win in the prologue, that can help her inch towards Sophia. And then I think especially on the men's side, there's definitely no one that is not going to do the prologue because the points
They're
are literally
way too close.
They're way too close. I mean, third, fourth, fifth are separated by 4 points. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, let's I'll read off these top 6 on both sides. For the men, we have Remy Bonnet with 600 points, Roberto De Lorenzi with 520, Manu Marias with 516, Eli Hemming 514, Patrick Kipnieno 512, and Philemon Kiriago with 464. And then on the women's side, Sophia Lockley 600, Judith Wider 588, Malinosa 488, Sylvia Nordskar 472, Miao Yao 463, and Therese LeBeuf 457 through the top 6. So both races are kind of similar in the sense that like up front they're not very close, but like right behind, like on the men's side, 2nd through 5th, on the women's side, 3rd through 6th are like super close.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I do think too, as you get down lower, the points kind of like get close again when you're like 15 through 20 and stuff like that. And yeah, for this series in particular, like if you place in the top 10, you not only get prize money, but you get an incentive for the following year, in that all of your travel and stuff is paid for, I believe, for at least 3 races. There's word that might change potentially next year as far as number of races, but like there's huge incentives. So like even if you're someone that's in 14th place or 15th place, like you're not just getting in the top 10 for the prestige, but depending on your level of support, like through your contract, etc., that can be a huge win for you if the next year Golden Trail is paying for you to go to Zagama, Mont Blanc, etc. And then I believe also if you place in the top 20, which is why they invite the top 30, you get like some free bibs the next year. So they don't necessarily pay for your travel, but you could still show up to Zagama and know that you have a spot reserved for you, for example. So people are running for a lot more than just, the initial prize money in prestige. There's like an extension, which I think is a large reason why Golden Trail has been so successful and desirable from the start.
Yeah, definitely the support is very needed, especially for these sub ultra events. It's getting better obviously, but there's not a ton of support for athletes that are running shorter distance. So it's cool that the series itself is like helping people develop basically.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also kind of another layer of athletes. So, there's those that are represented on the Golden Trail World Series results, but there's also those athletes who have been participating in their national series that will also be in this race, but their scores are kept separate. But if someone from a Golden Trail National Series, for example, like I believe Malin Osa was this person last year, they can displace you. So if somebody on the men's side is coming in with an entry from the Golden Trail National Series in France, for example, that person can get 3rd place and his points are separate, but he displaces everyone behind him. So it's almost like the 3rd place points don't exist, which also is kind of like a fun factor.
That is a lot of fun. Yeah, that was Malin last year. If you guys haven't yet, go listen to our little short episode with Malin. She came in from the national series last year and like absolutely crushed. And so she's doing the World Series this year.
Yeah. I think we should dive into the course for the next day and then some of our picks.
Yeah.
So this course has changed, but unlike what just happened with Valsir Mountain Cup, where it changed the week of, athletes have a little bit more headway. But this is also kind of, I think, a drastic change. Originally, the long course was supposed to have about 4,000 feet, which even like my gut feeling when they originally sent this course out, as the announcement for this year. My thought was like, that is not a lot of climbing for like a Golden Trail World Series final.
It feels too easy and also like feels short.
Yeah.
But based on pictures that we received from Mika, it may be just because it's so technical.
Yeah. But I didn't talk about the change yet. So that's what it
Yeah.
was supposed to be originally. And then it increased to 4,700 feet of climbing in 16 miles. So they definitely added almost 800 feet of climbing to what was originally slated. But yeah, originally we thought this was going to be pretty buttery. But Greg Valet, the mastermind that he is, depending on if you like technical trail or not, it depends on who you're runner. He likes to make things fun, and so he's just been out there cranking away on this trail, trying to make it more technical and difficult, in my opinion, to make sure the final has some exciting moments.
Yeah, based on the GPX that we were originally looking at when we started interviewing people. So you'll hear us in our little 15-minute episodes being like, oh, it's buttery, it'll be great. Like the pictures did look very buttery. And the course was also like, it felt more rolling, whereas now it feels much sharper in the ascents and descents. So yeah, I actually think this is definitely more of a Golden Trail final type race than the one that we were originally looking at.
I 100% agree. Yeah. Because I know personally when I thought about it way back when too, I was like, maybe this is not my year to do Golden Trail. Like this is very fast for a final. The other thing about the course though that they changed is that originally it kind of has always been kind of flowery. Where it kind of it was like a 4-leaf clover, I want to say was like maybe the original map is what it looked like. But now what they're doing is they only have one aid station and they're doing loops. And so they have 5 loops that they're doing and they're coming through the aid station / in quotes like fan zone. And I think it's cool that Golden Trail is like willing to be innovative, because I think that potentially could be a downfall for like a sport like ours, like if we get too comfortable and complacent and aren't willing to try new things. So it'll be interesting to see how this is received by not only spectators, but athletes. But their reasoning behind this was, one, I think it's easier for coverage of the actual race and it developing if you're seeing the athletes every 20 to 35 minutes, right, going out on these loops. 2, spectator friendly. Spectators can just stay in one place again. So along with like that viewing participation thing, and then also just like a smaller environmental impact. So in case, instead of people like driving around trying to view the race as it's going on, you can just stay in one place for the aid station. And then another advantage they mentioned was safety of the athletes. So like if something were to happen, they could get access to help. To me, I agree with that last one to a certain extent. It does seem like a pretty accessible place. Like it's on the coast in Italy where a lot of people live and stuff like that. So I think athletes would have been safe regardless, but it's cool that they're adding that as like another reason for the change.
Yeah. And just to clarify, they are doing 5 different loops. So 5 different loops, but each one comes back to the middle basically. And this course for especially our American listeners is like quite similar to a Broken Arrow in terms of the distance and elevation gain. But unlike Broken Arrow, where you basically just have 2 climbs, one's really big and one's kind of smaller, and 2 descents, you have 4 to 5 climbs with a steep descent in between each of them. And then there's even, it looks like that the last loop is like this tiny little, my guess is it's maybe like a K to a mile. And it's like this sharp little climb. And I'm imagining that's going to feel terrible at the end of the race.
Yeah. Honestly, what I just was thinking about is like, just pulling from my most recent experience of this at Kodiak, where like we had an aid station where you had to go out and back, and it was the last aid station. And I knew personally Bailey was still behind me. You kind of cross this midpoint where, I'm going down to the aid station, but you could just turn right to be on the course. You're not allowed to. You had to go to the aid station. That was part of the course. So with this, like, you're going to see your competition. as you
When you
come
make
in
the
and
turn. Yeah.
exactly, and you'll know exactly where they are behind you. And personally, I found that to be so helpful in that I kind of didn't want to see her, in a way where maybe I had already broken the line between us, but I did see her, and it allowed me to push so much harder because I was like, oh crap, she's right there.
Yeah.
So if people are coming in, like you can see on the map, like loop 3 and 4, there's two-way traffic. So imagine being someone like Sophia in the lead, seeing Judith just hammering a downhill. Oh, that's gonna light a fire under you for sure.
Yeah, it definitely makes it more fun. And you're getting constant feedback about how far people are behind you because the aid station is the same every time. Whereas, like, sometimes I feel like when you go to different aid stations, people give you like guesses. It's not quite as good. Like Sophia telling us that she thought that EmKay was like 30 seconds behind her for the last 4 miles, but she was like 5 minutes behind her.
Exactly. I think
Yeah.
personally, my goal would be to be on the same loop as the finisher, the first place
Yeah.
finisher. Like in track when you're doing a 10K, I'm like, as long as I'm on the
Just
same
don't get
lap,
lapped.
yeah, don't get lapped. That would be my goal. Is like just don't be on the third loop when the winner's on the fifth loop. uh,
Definitely. Well, and something that I feel like we kind of brushed over it, but I want to mention is that the men's and women's races are on different days this year, which is new. And that is also better for coverage of the women's events. And I think that that's great. I also think that part of it is because the race is so short that you would just miss the entire women's race because the men would, the men and the women aren't going to finish that far apart as they
yeah,
would in like a stage race or a longer race. So I think that's really great that they each have their own days. And that's for the prologue as well.
yeah, I think that's incredible. A step in the right direction, at least for these shorter races. You could never do something like that with like UTMB. Before we get into our picks, just like, drawing from your own personal experience, how do you think you would approach these two races, assuming you're running both of them?
Well, I'd definitely be running both of them because I'm the kind of person that can't just like give away points like that. I would say because they're such short races, I feel like you got to hammer day one, but not hammer the downhill too hard. Like you got to just send it on the uphill, maybe save your legs a little bit on the downhill, but it also doesn't seem like that steep of a descent that maybe you would need to. Because in my head, it's kind of like a VK 26K type double. So you can run pretty hard without maybe totally taking it out of yourself. It's almost like a tune up. And then, I mean, the 26K, yeah, I agree with you. Like, first off, I'd just be trying to finish in the same lap as the leader. But I think that because you see people so frequently, you want to keep people in contact enough that you know where they are on each lap. So
Yeah.
you can maybe let people go, but not so much that you're going to miss that turn and seeing them.
Yeah. Do you think this is the type of race that you can just hammer from the beginning, or do you think you have to take the profile into consideration?
I think you've got to take the profile into consideration. If you hammer too early, like those descents are going to crush you because they look steep.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say the same about the prologue. You almost like go as hard as you can on the uphill and then just try to not pound on the downhill because I would
Maintain.
maintain, like, I would imagine it probably is on some cobblestone or road, just knowing Europe type of terrain. Um, and to me, the part that just is really sticking out on this longer course is that downhill right before 15K. Um, there's kind of like it goes up, down, and then you have like a quick up, down, and then it's kind of steep, and then you go into your longest climb right after that. So I feel like whoever you're trying to beat or be with, like be with them, and that's almost the decision point for the race besides the very last loop.
Yeah,
Because
with
if
that
you
stupid little climb,
the stupid little climb that looks also equally steep.
which is super short.
Yeah, it says it's 22% the last climb. So if you,
Ouch.
yeah, 22% for basically 0.3. So 22% in like basically like a 500 meter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hiker probably for a lot of people.
For a lot of people. Yeah.
It's like that uphill, that last little uphill at the Mammoth Trail Fest this year.
Oh, exactly. That's exactly what that is. That is so funny. Yeah. And that climb that we're saying is the steepest has, it looks like 28% on the hardest part.
Ouch.
Ouch. All right. Who are you picking for your podiums? Just like maybe both of them if you can.
Yeah. So I think on the women's side, like Sophia and Judith, there's probably not going to be much movement. Who knows? I mean, Judith definitely beat Sophia in the last race, but I don't know. I think Sophia is my favorite this year. Maybe I'm just an American and want the American to win, but so I think it's Sophia.
Well, Sophia
Judith.
beat Judith at Pikes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I said. Okay.
But then I think that there's a possibility that Yao Miao moves into third. And I think that's my women's podium. And then on the men's side, Remy Bonnet is like pretty far ahead. So it'd be really hard for anyone to dethrone him. But I think, God, this men's race is crazy. I think that Patrick will finish second. I think he will move up just because I think his points would have been higher had Mammoth not gone the way that it went. Unfortunately, Philemon lost too many points at Pikes and Mammoth. So I think he's out of the running. And then, so Remy first, Patrick second. I think it's going to be really close between Roberto and Manu. Usually I would add Eli Hemming in there as well, but he just ran a 50K this weekend, is traveling. I'd be surprised if he's as fresh as those guys. But I think it's going to be Manu over Roberto now that the course has changed. So Remy, Patrick, Manu.
Nice. Those are solid. Yeah. For me, I think there's some people that the prologue will add a little spice. Like on the women's side, I could see Floria like podium mean potentially in the prologue, but I don't know if she'll be like top 4 on the longer day just because I don't know how her technical skills are. But she's just fast, right? And so I could see her moving up, but I don't think she has enough time to move up all the way until the podium. But I could see her messing up other people's points. Mao Yao, I think, is going to mess up people's points too, because she's in 5th right now. I could see her moving up into 3rd also, just because I actually haven't raced her. Oh, I guess I partially raced her at OCC, but I don't count that. But she just shoots out like a rocket.
Yeah.
In all these races. And I've heard she's actually pretty good at technical terrain too. I just haven't seen it yet, so I can't like fully grasp it.
And she's been there for like, by the time the race starts, I think she will have been there for like 10 to 14 days in advance to check out the course.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage for sure. Therese LeBoeuf, I also could see like getting up in there because she's a very good technical runner, and it seems like she's taken somewhat of a break. I think she's done a couple like Valsir Mountain Running Cup things, but dang, honestly, I think I'm just gonna put this out there. I think Sophia and Judith have a good chance of tying. Like when all is said and done. Yeah, because I also would love to see Sophia take the win, but it's really hard for me to bet against Judith now that I know it's more technical. Yeah. And Sophia has showed she can also run crazy technical stuff at Dolomites, but that is her only loss of the season and in a very long to Judith. Yeah. To Judith. And yeah, I think honestly the prologue might decide it, because like to me, Sophia can take some prologue points, but that's not a lot of points. And so if Judith takes the win the next day, and if somehow somebody manages like Miao Yao to like push Sophia back, then suddenly we got a tie going on. Yeah. So,
do they have rules for tiebreakers?
I don't know. That's why I kind of want it. I want to see what happens. They're like, and you have a third race.
Yeah, because Skyrunning does have rules for that.
You know what? They do have. So then Sophia would win, I think, because it's whoever has more wins in the regular season.
Okay.
So then Sophia would win. But yeah, points wise.
But they're tied on that too. Because Sophia won Mont Blanc Marathon and Pikes, and Judith won Dolomites and Mammoth.
No, but Sophia also won Sierra Snall. That's how she has
Oh,
perfect
I
points.
forgot. Yep,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah. That's why she
Okay.
has 600. Yeah, no, but I get it for sure. So yeah, I think it's like a tie, and then I think Meow Yao gets that third spot. I would love to see Malin like hold on to it, but I think Meow Yao is just like such
She's
a
on fire
rocket.
this year.
She's such a rocket.
She does not play around.
And then I think Malin and Teresa LaBeouf are in there, and then Malin adds like an interesting point twist somehow, but doesn't move up that high because she doesn't have time. Yeah. Men's side, Remy, it would take something really crazy to happen for him. Like he gets injured on the first day, knock on wood, and somehow can't compete. Honestly, I'm keeping Roberto in second. He got second at Dolomites. He's fast. The only thing that I could think of holding him back is that he did Pikes, Mammoth, and then he did a marathon. So
at Ultra Pyrenees.
At Ultra Pyrenees. And so potentially he might be more tired than he realizes. And so, but I think if he's fresh, like he's got all he's a sky runner, he's fast, he could climb, he could descend. And so I could see him potentially beating Manuel because of something like the prologue, where I would put Roberto ahead of Manu. And then I think Patrick and Philemon, I don't know if they'll move. I could see them moving above Eli Hemming. But I don't see either of them moving up onto the podium, unfortunately, just because like, again, technical, 26K, I haven't seen them do something super technical yet. So it's more just a question. I just don't know. And then Eli, same, like I could see him staying in the top 5 more so because him and Tabor do these doubles all the time. So he is actually someone that, like, even though he just did a 50K, it was a pretty fast 50K. Like he was under 4 hours. So it just depends on how he's feeling. So I'm going to go Remy.
How their travel goes.
And how their travel goes. So I'm still going to keep it Remy, Roberto, Manu, but then 3rd or 4th, 5th, and 6th will get mixed up somehow.
Yeah. Well, we will put these in the show notes, but for Golden Trail, you can watch from the fan zone if you're in Noli, Italy. You can watch on Eurosport, on the Golden Trail Series YouTube, and on Golden Trail TV. And again, those races happen women's prologue on Thursday, men's prologue Friday, women's race Saturday, men's race Sunday.
Yeah, I'm so excited. End of season championships.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I'm also excited that I'm not racing any of them this year. I'm pretty tired.
Yeah, I feel like my body could have, but my mind was kaput for it. And I think EmKay and I are both eyeing some Golden Trail World Series next year. Maybe not the full series, but some races here and there. So we'll see. Maybe we'll be boots on the ground again next year at a few more events.
With our tiny mics.
With our tiny mics. Yes, I love that. And yeah, we also, last but not least, we'll keep you posted on kind of what the next few months are going to look like for us. Again, this is our first year doing the pod, so we're kind of just, learning as we go, but also just want to make it so it's sustainable for us because, like we just mentioned, I'm in my season end. EmKay's still training, getting ready for CIM, but it's kind of nice to like fully unplug when you're off season as an athlete. So yeah, we'll probably announce sometime soon kind of what the next months will look like, but for sure come January, we'll be starting to crank out more episodes again.
Yeah, definitely. We'll probably take some breaks.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again for listening. This has been the SubHub podcast brought to you by Freetrail and Never Second.
Let's go. Use code SubHub25 at checkout to get 25% off your purchase.